Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So the Storyteller Journals are back in the Zen market. You can buy the set to go with them along with this pack where you can choose one of the following Storyteller Journals. Now many of you are asking, is it going to be worth having 3 of these storybooks when the Band of Air is going to be getting a nerf and most likely can't proc off procs? Well, let's go over that in this video. But first, back to the Zen market, you can buy indeed this sash and also this scarf, and straight up I'll tell you, it's absolutely not worth it for tank, healers, or DPS. I have the set just here, and the bonus to your ability scores is not worth a penny compared to other sets out there. You may notice the additional hit you can gain from there, and be my guest, check any damage log, and you can see that Tails artifact set down the bottom there, 464 DPS. Compare that to a million, and that's nothing. So that would be an utter waste of your Zen. Then we go to the books themselves. You're paying 1,500 base costs to Zen for this pack, which you only get one of those artifacts. If I were to go and just buy one of these packs, I would buy the Envenomed Storyteller Journals for tanks, healers, and DPS, as it is a very good artifact to give you back this action point regeneration. Every class will do better the more often they can spam their dailies. Keep in mind you'll want to buy the tails for that, which will be in the Wondrous Bazaar here in the equipable section. Make sure to find out which tails you need, and they will correspond to which book you need. You can see each book has a set of 5 different tails. And it's an artifact I would highly recommend in AoE fights, as well as single target fights when you're not running in a coordinated group, when you're not running buff and debuff artifacts. So then to move on, would I run 3 of these books? Is it any good to be using? Well, before I get into the nitty gritty details of this video, I'd say for tanks, only good for aggro. For healers, only worth it if you're in scaled content. For DPS, only worth it if you're in scaled content. You can see by this table that I've constructed the overall damage you would gain by using these 3 Storyteller Journals, and then this would add up to 0.29% versus just running higher item level artifacts. And if you're scaled, that adds up to nearly a 2.5% additional damage bonus. And so I cannot recommend spending 4,500 Zen for 3 of these packs for a gain of only 0.29%. And even that is questionable, as the additional hit for some classes will be even less than an overall 1% damage boost. More on that later on in the video. So let's move on to the more in-depth part of the video where I'll explain, is it worth running all 3 of those books to complete that set? Well, for a tank, I would highly recommend those 3 books, and the reason being is it causes your attacks to deal an additional hit. You can see you gain the set of the Storyteller Journals. We currently have 3 out of 4. They will essentially add 0.5% power and 5,000 maximum hit points, and also deal an additional hit for weapon damage on a critical hit. And your weapon damage is this damage just here, scaled off your item level. And the way it works is that on a tank we have at-wills that do next to no damage. The magnitudes are minuscule, and having this extra hit every time you use your at-wills is just much more beneficial for that extra threat and continual threat regeneration, due to this extra damage hit being also multiplied by your threat modifier. But most of the time people will want you to run a buff or debuff artifact, and then you'll only be able to run 2 of the books, and then it's just better to go for an extra survivability boost of stamina regeneration using these sort of artifacts that I've gone over in another video. And as I've already mentioned before, healers will gain a tiny bit more healing, like less than 1%, due to the extra 0.5% power you gain per book, along with the extra ability scores, because you would gain no benefit from just having more item level. And as I've quickly shown already, for a DPS, it's definitely good for scaled content, 2.5% extra damage, but otherwise it's not really that big a deal when you just compare against higher level artifacts. And it's very feasible to get all 4 of these 1,200 item level artifacts. You have one for your set, you have then like the new Tiamat artifact you'll be getting, the Demogorgon artifact, and then you have the ones from the Echoes of Prophecy. You'll be getting the new Wyvern Knives one. And all those give a 1800 increase to the item level, and thus it is in favor of running just higher level item level artifacts. But that's not all what these Storyteller Journals give you. They additionally give you, as you can see, that additional hit for weapon damage. And looking at a trial damage log, the Lost Math Vengeance, which is that additional hit, is like 1% of our overall damage. And we can switch to other classes. For example, a fighter here with Lost Math Vengeance, you can see only 5,000 encounter DPS, where you're nearly at 800,000 encounter DPS there. Again, less than 1% additional damage from these 3 Storyteller books with that additional hit. On a Warlock, same story, only 1% of your overall damage is from the 3 books. And so when not in scaled content, depending on the class, this additional hit could overcome that item level difference. But then when in scaled content, removing the item level difference, you can see that you have nearly a 1.5% damage bonus in favor just by the stats to the 3 times Storyteller artifacts. And then throwing in the additional hit for 1% thereabouts, you get up to a 2.5% damage difference. But keep in mind, this additional hit has also led to additional procs of the Band of Air. So let's go into how much damage do you gain from this Lost Math Vengeance with the Band of Air, and thus how much will we lose and will it be worth it, etc, etc, when potentially this extra hit doesn't proc the Band of Air. Then you can see for an example test here, this is running with the Touch of Wind there with our Lost Math Vengeance, and this is using all the other sources we would generally use to proc the Band of Air as well, except for ferocity. And if we take out the Lost Math Vengeance, as you can see it's just there, and we go to here, you can see Touch of Wind goes down to 84.4 thousand encounter DPS and no Lost Math Vengeance, and before we had 89,000 encounter DPS. So you could see that on this chart here, we're going from this to this. Overall Band of Air damage loss would be about 5%, and if the Band of Air is 20% of your damage, then you're losing overall just 1% damage. So is the books worth buying then off the Zen market? No, it's a pretty hefty price for pretty much no additional benefit in terms of damage, even looking at having it proc the Band of Air. This is again on a rogue where you have a lot of ability to proc that Band of Air. On other classes, the Lost Math Vengeance from the 3 Storyteller books could be a little bit better because you don't have that many additional hits. Now we can go back here and look. Let's say I have my Lost Math Vengeance and I try, let's say, only hit with an at-will. Yeah, so we take out Oppressive Darkness, we take out all of the gear pieces like Poisoned Thorn or Mythalar, and we can see Lost Math Vengeance contributing to our Touch of Wind. 35,000 encounter DPS from Touch of Wind. We take out Lost Math Vengeance, same test, and we go down to 26.5 thousand encounter DPS. So we've lost a significant amount of damage from our Band of Air just by taking out Lost Math Vengeance when we don't have so many other sources to proc the Band of Air. So let's say they went and decided we're not going to change the effect that the 3 storybooks can proc the Band of Air. If they don't change that, but do go and change Mythalar, they do go and change Poisoned Thorn and a bunch of our class abilities, then what does that leave us with? Is the Storyteller books going to become like particularly better and you should buy them now? Well, we can have a look at this chart. So you would lose about 24% of your DPS from your Band of Air. And that would lead to an overall damage loss of like 5%, depending of course how much the Band of Air will contribute to your overall damage. And so yeah, the storybooks could become even more valuable if they can still proc the Band of Air when other things are changed so they can't. And that would really make the books worth buying for endgame at least. So personally, I would not take the risk with these Storyteller books. We can see by the math that they give very little benefit compared to just running higher item level artifacts. Again, keep in mind, item level is absolutely useless when running scaled content, which is most of the time and even going to be with the new module with Dragon Hunts. But again, the damage bonus from just the 3 books is so insignificant that I wouldn't say it's worth buying the storybooks, even though it's limited time and they might not come around, and what happens when they leave it being able to proc the Band of Air. I still wouldn't say they're worth it right now. We don't know which way it's going to go. They will very likely change it so that it doesn't proc the Band of Air, because that's what they've said they will do. They'll make it so that gear procs won't proc the Band of Air. So with that, just a quick summary. Tanks, I would take it for additional aggro. It's very small, but it helps, and it helps better than just to boost your item level, that additional hit. Healers, you gain a tiny benefit to your power, absolutely minuscule, and if you're not scale, the item level is generally better. And for DPS, it's the same story unless you have the Band of Air. If you don't have the Band of Air, higher item level artifacts are just the equivalent by looking at the additional damage proc compared to the additional stats you would gain and the item level you would lose or gain depending on what you're using. The only time I would get the books is if you have the Band of Air and it procs the Band of Air, and I can't promise you it will still proc the Band of Air in the future. So hopefully this has been somewhat insightful to you guys. With that said, I'd like to give a massive thank you to all of my channel members for helping me keep my channel going. And if you're presenting this well, consider leaving the video a like. And if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.